go for it.
I have the great pleasure and honor to be with someone extremely unique and distinct, with a set of diverse perspectives that I think are tremendously needed today, especially. Renos, I would love to welcome you in, and please introduce yourself as we get into the conversation.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I'm Renos Papadopoulos, and I'm professor at the University of Essex in the UK in the Department of Psychosocial and Psychoanalytic Studies. And I'm the director of the Center for Trauma, Asylum, and Refugees. But I'm also a Jungian psychoanalyst and a family therapist. And I've been training all my professional life, clinical psychologist, family therapist, and Jungian psychoanalyst. I've been consultant to UN and different other organizations working all over the world with people who have been exposed to various forms of adversity, mainly refugees, but also traumatized people from torture and all sorts of situations, as well as natural disasters. And with the COVID now, I've been doing quite a bit of work in the UK and abroad in relation to that.
Fantastic,
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And Renos, this is what really attracted me to you through, of course, Charlie Weinberg, if you will, is your perspective is so broad, and there's so many lessons that we can learn from adversity activated development. So please, anything you have to share with us, things that we can take away, things that any insights, my friend, we're all ears.
Thank you. Well, the way I try to look at things is what is it that we do not look at? Instead of trying to prescribe things, is what is it that we find it difficult to look at because of the nature of the situation. What is the nature of the situation? The nature of the situation is, just very briefly, we can say it's emotionally laden. It's emotionally charged. There are a lot of pressing needs. There is, when adversity strikes, people get out of their comfort zones, and then they are completely disoriented. In addition to any specific losses that they may incur, there is also this disorientation. And what happens in this sort of disorientation, and because there's a lot of complexity also, people, they are bamboozled. They don't know, if they expected A, they see B. All these things about uncertainty and predictability, helplessness, and all of that get us into situations where it's not what we don't know what to do, but we do not even know how to conceptualize that. We don't know what words to use. And then we borrow different words that are floating around by the politicians or the smart professionals and all of that. But essentially, people are unable to grasp what is happening. And when that happens, what we see in reality, what have we seen now with COVID, is a huge polarization. And this is what usually happens in situations. Because it's difficult to comprehend the complexity, and we don't have tools, and there are situations that are unfamiliar. We try to oversimplify our perception, and the commonest form of oversimplification is polarization. Mm-hmm. And therefore, what we have seen with COVID now is absolutely classic in all situations. We have been seeing horror stories, we have been listening to horror stories and seeing horror situations. Not long ago, before the COVID, I was in New York, in Manhattan, in the same places. We see lorries, fridge lorries, carrying bodies in New York. And mass graves, a few miles from Manhattan, mass graves. So apocalyptic images of utter destruction and death on the one hand, and then on the other hand, we get these incredible narratives of people saying, I don't know if you have seen it, there is a letter from coronavirus saying in a nice seductive female voice, don't worry, darling, I'm here to help you. stop your meaningless rushing here and there. Now it's time for you to breathe cleaner air, listen to the birds, spend more time with your family, reflect more, etc. I'm here to help you, etc. So either idealization, incredibly positive things, or demonization, incredibly horror stories, sharp polarization. That's the reality of what we see. So we try to sort of say, but what is the truth? But the truth is both.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is both. And the truth is that, yes, there are all of these positive things are also real, but the dangers are equally real.
Mm-hmm.
Now, human beings, from Uncle Aristotle, we cannot hold on to oppositionality and complexity, that the utter negative and the utter positive can coexist, yet they do. And then the complexity is that, in what way do I respond to this, and under what conditions I respond to that? Because both are true. So it's not to sort of say, okay, don't waste my time with complexities. Is it good or is it bad? Well, it's both good and bad. Catch that. It is both good and bad. And it depends on how I respond to either maximize the good and even increase it, or minimize the bad as much as possible, So that's the first thing. And staying with the positive things, whereas it's difficult for us to conceptually understand something good coming of something very bad, the fact is that always has been so. Mm-hmm. Out of everything, I mean, wars are terrible things, but in wars also incredible acts of, I'm not interested in bravery, acts of kindness. That's a new word that has emerged now. I've been living in London, in East London, for 40 years in this area. We have some friends here in the neighborhood, but 2, 3. Now with the virus, they developed a WhatsApp group, and they're offering help to older people, to people with disabilities, etc. The community cohesion that has developed is absolutely remarkable. Mm-hmm. So these acts of kindness and this sense of connection and realization that we belong together and we can help each other, these are direct responses from our exposure to adversity. That is what I've been calling for donkey's years, adversity activated development. Development that emerges directly as a result of being exposed to adversity. In all languages and cultures, we have the sort of cliche, what doesn't kill you strengthens you, but that's actually a reality. That's a reality. And in psychology and psychiatry, things got a little bit mixed up there, because they talk about trauma, or resilience, or post-traumatic growth, as if there has to be a trauma first and then a growth, or whatever. I mean, a lot of confusion. Adversity activated, for me, simply expresses the reality that after or during every adversity, human beings, we are the most adaptable creatures on earth. From the fact that actually we regenerate everything all the time, which we don't notice, to the way that people live in the North Pole and Sahara and all of that, and people survive the Auschwitz camps and all sorts of things. We survive. That's the natural thing of human beings, to survive any kind of adversity, to adapt to adversity, to counteract the negative effects of adversity as much as possible. But you see, if we go immediately into the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and the stress, 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 trauma, 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 then we don't realize that actually we learned anything there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ask people, well, tell me about your stress, of course it's part of it, but also tell me what things have not changed about you, and you still continue to have in you whatever strengths you have, as well as what new things you may have gained from this horrible situation. Then you have the whole reality. So you restore complexity. Rhetorically, I say that the first casualty of trauma is complexity.
Mm.
We lose complexity in trauma. Whatever trauma means, that's another story. Um, um, so in order to restore complexity, I have I used to call it the earlier days trauma grid. Now I call it, from more than 10 years, 12 years, I call it now adversity grid, where simply it helps people to sort of say, okay, what negative effects have been for me from this adversity, virus, or war, famine, whatever, whatever. What strengths have I been able to retain from my previous life before I was exposed to this adversity? And what have I learned
Mm-hmm.
from from my exposure to this adversity? And then a person then has a much more realistic understanding of who they are. I'm not telling them to do anything. I'm asking them, look at yourself and be more reflective of what you are doing and what you have before you allow all the smart experts to tell you that you should breathe and you should have good sleep. Thank you very much. All of us know that. But of course, some people make money by saying the obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying, yeah, listen to the experts if you want to, but listen to your first to yourself. Now, talking about complexity, these adversities affect not only me, but also affect my family, whatever I construe as my family. In other words, my people closest to me. And also they affect my community, whatever community that may be, either ethnic or religious or cultural or linguistic or geographical, like neighborhood, etc., or my work organization, etc. And then the last one, so individual, family, workplace or community, whatever, or the wider community or wider society. And if people can see these, what the negative effects, what qualities, strong qualities have been retained, and what we have learned at these different levels, immediately people have a complex way of understanding themselves, and they counteract that oversimplification, which is polarization. And that is, the staff support essentially is based on that. I can explain it very clearly, and you can discuss that, and you can talk about that in Somalia with community leaders who have not gone to a university, or to the new school that I was teaching in New York a few months ago. So the basic principle, the basic sort of framework is very simple, and it's real. And I'm not prescribing anybody anything. And then if a person can then take it further, and they can do it today, and then in few weeks later, they do the same kind of self-reflection at these levels, then they can see themselves what things changed, in what way, and they can reflect what made those things, or those changes, to become better or worse. And they learn from themselves. So talking about empowerment and all of that, this is empowerment for people to see, to trust more themselves instead of listening to smart experts, and learning from themselves. And then, of course, when it comes to appreciating their own strengths, inevitably, once they see also the family and the organization and all of that, then they realize that they receive strength from others, but also they can give strength to others. So this is very simple framework that can be explained with in sort of highly academic, intellectual language, which I can do that for if you can come and do the course as Charlie did, or you can do it for 3 years on that, or I can be explained simply, and people grasp that and they relate to that.
Renos, it's absolutely brilliant. If I can ask a few questions, if you don't mind.
Here I am.
I treasure the time with you, truly treasure, and truly gratitude to Charlie for bringing us together. You know, what I hear you saying is, and please correct me if I've misheard anything, you know, naturally the world is complex. And when we oversimplify, when we take paradox and oversimplify it, create polarities, essentially we're doing ourselves a disservice. At that point, it's oversimplification.
Yes.
Versus truly, and polarization. If I can add, just if you don't mind, please chime in. Thank you. If we truly embrace the complexity, we have a realistic point of view, which empowers us then to deal with the paradox and the polarities rather than have it decomposed by oversimplification. And in that way, it empowers us to remain whole and to act in the world.
Exactly. Absolutely. The difficulty is that
Sir, your framework is absolutely brilliant, I must say. I mean, it truly puts things in a very, very particular way. So thank you for that. My apologies for interrupting you.
Thank you. The difficulty for me, the way I see it, is that people are afraid of complexity because they are thinking of confusing complexity. That's why I call this as discerning complexity. I make a differentiation between the discerning complexity and the confusing complexity. People run away from complexity because, especially when we're overwhelmed by all of this, bombarded by all of these experiences, negative, positive, and all of that, we get completely confused, and we say, come on, tell me, is it good or is it bad? So the tendency for oversimplification is a natural human response, but it's not a useful one.
Yes.
It's not, it goes contrary to the reality. We want to oversimplify the phenomena, which in their nature are actually complex, because always there will be positive and negative things. And it's just a question for us to discern them and then position ourselves appropriately in relation to them. So it's not, yes, it is, and well, there are so many things that we can develop. But yes, in answering to your question, it is so. The tendency for oversimplification and then polarization comes impulsively, but we should make a distinction between impulsivity and naturalness.
Yes.
And authenticity.
Yes.
And an appropriate way of perceiving phenomena. Our impulsive way, if I go to the doctor, my tooth is to run away, and then I'm going to damage my tooth and everything. I need to stay there and see it through.
Yes. Yes.
The impulsive thing is reflective. It's sort of it's using the autonomic nervous system, the autonomic, and not the central nervous system. Yeah.
I'm sorry, please go on, forgive me. There's a couple sort of thoughts which I would love your sort of response to, if you will, please, Renos. One of them is the way that you're describing it. I've often applied the term, embracing reality. And embracing reality, yes, is that, yes?
Yes.
Forgive me, because thank you, my apologies. So embracing reality is most I'll say respectfully, people and organizations, they don't deal with reality. They don't embrace it. And then on the other side of it, you're shaking your head, which they don't. Yeah. And then on the other side of it, they don't embrace human nature, because we are whole beings. That's the other piece of it. And I know this came up in the conversations with Charlie as we've talked, but those two aspects seem so richly integrated in your worldview as you're describing. It's extremely powerful.
Yes. Yes. Yes, of course. I mean, talking about holistic, I mean, this is the idea of a proper holistic thing in terms of looking at the totality of the effects that an adversity has on me, and looking at my whole self, which includes the damaged part, and there are damages.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like psychologists who are talking about strengths-based psychology. Why strengths? Why strengths and why trauma-based? Both are there.
Yes.
And what we need is a very simple framework that includes both.
Yes.
Why strengths-based or trauma-based? Trauma is one part of the picture, and strength is another part. Why don't we have a simple framework that includes both? Because
Yes.
that is reality. That is reality. And this is human nature. Human nature is that, yes, we're affected by some adversity, and there are some losses incurred and everything, but at the same time, also there are we retain some of our, not the totality of our being has been distorted as a result of that. We still, I don't know, you can still play the piano, or you can still love your children, or you can still like poetry, or whatever. You start from ordinary, simple things that you have retained, but also then you can see more relevant qualities, characteristics, relationships that you have been able to retain that have not been affected negatively by the adversity. And then you move further to see also and what other parts of you have been affected actually positively, that now we have more time to reflect, more time to consider priorities of life before we're rushing here and there and all of that. I mean, I had 2 work trips abroad every month, all over the world. I was rushing here and there. I was enjoying it, and I still enjoy it. But I mean, I do that now on Skype or on Zoom. Yes, it offers, we need to be open to see also what benefits and what we have gained. And these are not external things that I gain from outside. If we develop further the whole concept, we realize that activates in me positive things that I didn't know that they were there. Talking to people, this is what they say. I never thought that I would be a compassionate person. I thought that I was going to work, coming home, and nothing else. Being sensitive to my fellow human beings' suffering never entered my mind that I was that kind of person. I thought it was other people, but now I see that that is also part of me. Yeah. They didn't. Nobody split their brain and put in. Realized that that was a part of them that they activated. It's like muscles that we don't know that they are there, and we activate them, and then we feel stronger and we feel more full. Mm-hmm. And this is the idea, the holistic in that sense, bringing into play as many aspects of our humanity as possible. And one of the most important aspects of humanity is caring for other human beings. Mm-hmm. Because, we don't need to be philosophers or whatever. We're not islands, and we're not just simply for profit and trampling over other people's bodies. I mean, we get more sense of not of satisfaction of our own humanity, the more we connect with humanity, and we connect with humanity both in their joy as well as in their sorrow. Mm-hmm. And not making this artificial thing that we had so many years, that in your blessed constitution, the kind of the American Constitution, the pursuit of happiness. I mean, and that's another story about happiness and well-being. We don't have very much time, but I mean, there are at least, again, going back to Uncle Aristotle, I mean,
Yes.
he made a distinction between two types of well-being. One is the hedonic, which is avoidance of suffering, and the other is eudaimonic, which is connecting with our virtues and exercising our potentiality. So why we talk about well-being only in terms of removal of suffering? And we're not masochists. We don't want people to experience pain, but if pain is there as part of life, it's part of life. And our aim is not just to stop that, but try to expand our own totality. And our well-being is in terms of sense of fulfillment, not in terms of happiness when we're feeling sort of Disneyland happy, which is, by the way, you may know that there is a sociological term Disneylandization.
Yes.
You know, we make the whole word plastic and oversimplified and sort of happy tra-la-la sort of thing, which is, you know, is nothing to do with human beings. It's I mean, if anything, the measure of culture in different societies is the amount of their differentiation of human suffering, from Dostoevsky to music to anything, blues and all of that. It's about the dignity of including pain in the totality of individuals. But our superficial, instant culture that is, you know, expecting a hedonic definition of well-being misses the whole thing.
My friend, you are absolutely brilliant. You're absolutely brilliant. You connect so many dots, and you know, I just want to kind of throw out a few things, if you will. And I know we're short on time, and I want to respect your time tremendously. You know, embracing reality has been a very key pillar in the thought process, and I see you shaking your head. Yes, embracing reality. Another one is ensuring our aliveness. This is the way we're alive, is if we are whole. If we are not whole, we're not alive. And yes, and I see you shaking your head likewise. I know as folks listen to this, they're not going to see you, but they're going to hear you. So you're in agreement on some of those things. And we intersect, and I know Charlie and I discussed some of the aspects here. We intersect through our identity. All these components come to who are we as individuals, as groups, etc. And reality and human nature, like you mentioned, we have a few more minutes. If I can ask one more question, if you don't mind, Renos, thank you so much. If you can offer, you know, one bit of advice that people can really embrace and carry, what guidance would you give us?
Well, again, just to repeat different way what I said, that we should try to look at our own complex responses to adversity, and not be swept away.
Oh, Renos, can you hear me? Renos, can you hear me? Renos, can you hear me? What do I have here? We don't have, can you hear me, Renos? Do you mind dropping off and coming back on? Dropping off and coming back on? Okay.
I'll repeat tell me when to.
Thank you,
Okay.
Renos. My apologies,
Okay.
we lost you when we asked the question. Please, you know, guidance and would be appreciated.
Yes, yes, what I was saying is that actually it will be useful for people to distance a little bit themselves from the slogans around, both from politicians as well as experts, and try to listen to themselves and try to understand a little bit better with their loved ones in what negative ways this calamity has really affected them beyond slogans, etc. In what real ways they have been affected negatively, what important, relevant qualities, characteristics, relationships, etc., of theirs have not been affected by these negative consequences, and in what way they have actually gained from these experiences now. And by looking at that by themselves, and then looking at that in terms of their level, their family level, their workplace or whatever, all of this is discerning in order to break that kind of monolithic tendency that impulsively emerges in us to see things either in terms of black or white. And now in America and everywhere in the world, we're trying to sort of bring the black and white that we kept apart for so long together, which they do belong together. And it's an artificial division at so many different levels. So this is exactly what I'm saying. And the wholeness is there. So it's not really to sort of tell them what they should do, it's just how they should value and respect themselves, so that they can see in what way they are really affected, and not how they have been told that they are affected or they should respond.
Yes.
So this is the proper empowerment, also in terms of understanding themselves holistically and using as many facets of being human as possible, which is not just simply profit and my functioning at work, but also as now with I'm a primary school teacher with my grandchildren now, learning new skills,
Yep.
Gardening and all of that. Using as many qualities of being human as possible.
Yeah, there's nothing. It's extremely eloquent and beautiful and foundational to listen to you, because there's nothing that transcends being whole. And if you neglect any aspect of yourself, it's to your detriment. The holistic, and I know people again won't be able to see you, but you're shaking your head yes. The holistic, yes. So thank you for that, Renos. I know we're short on time. I've got one sort of slight question, if you don't mind. In some of the work, we talk about seeking a degree of stress in order to help us become more whole. Any thoughts on that? Kind of seeking stress almost intentionally to achieve a degree of wholeness. I would love your thoughts, Renos, on that.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I mean, what comes to my mind is the sort of medieval monks that they used to sort of whip themselves. Life does that for me,
Naturally.
Naturally. So why do we need to? I mean, if I'm not a switched off human being, I will experience stress everywhere, all the time, in addition to everything else. I mean, another huge chapter is that, for example, conflict, misunderstanding are endemic in human relationships. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is what we do with that. If anything, the deeper the human relationships in organizations, in personal, and all of that, it's inevitable that some misunderstandings, intentional or unintentional, will happen and some stress will emerge. Fine. The question is how we deal with that. Yeah. But I will not seek that intentionally as part of any technique. As you can hear from me, I hate techniques.
Yes.
Although I've been training people, but in the essence, not in the techniques of clinical psychologists, family therapists, and psychoanalysts. The idea is not techniques. The idea is to understand the essence of human functioning in us, and going back to basic human values of respect and valuing the enormous miracle of what a human being is.
Beautiful.
We forget that. We forget that. I mean, you know, people go to places that are, you know, working in Yemen. I mean, you know, terrible, terrible. They're wonderful human beings. And what do I see there? A traumatized and human beings, yes. But if I were to connect with their greatness as human beings, will they have that opportunity to get that validation from anybody else? I can offer much more in that, in helping them connect with some genuine appreciation of that wonderful human being that I was able to connect with on that particular day, instead of only go there to sort of see them as an invalid of PTSD, and I play around with them with some little tricks of correcting their damagedness. I mean, it's a sense of proportion after a while. If you have a certain period of time, what do? You connect humanly with people in a way that you validate them as human beings. But the majority of people do not even know what that is, validating human beings and seeing the beauty of human beings. So, you know, I mean, the one thing brings the other. If we live in society that has been drumming into us about success and about trampling everybody for our own, you know, what values are we left with? And this is what the coronavirus has come to help us revise those values and reconnect with priorities. And what I do hope, perhaps that will be the best way to end, is that we don't forget this at the end of when this comes to an end. After every catastrophic experience of mass scale in humanity, there is this incredible surge of humanity and connection, and not just simply camaraderie and all of that, but just genuine human connection. After the Second World War, after the First World War, after big earthquakes, etc., you see how people embrace each other, feeling the wonderful warmth of human beings, etc., etc. And then after that dissipates because we go back to our usual things. I mean, after 9/11, everything was trauma, the narrative. And then after, people said, wait a minute, actually, that event, horrible as it was, created a lot of amazing acts of kindness. And a lot of communities were developed, and a lot of meaningful connections were enabled, etc., etc. I don't know if they are still around. You know, most of these things dissipate after a while. So this is what I hope, that after we cure this pandemic, at least the spirit of collaboration and all the positive things are not forgotten too quickly. They will be forgotten until the next catastrophe, but I hope not as much.
Very well said, Renos. Very well said. And I love your focus, not on techniques, but on the essentials of wholeness and naturalness. Those, it's very, very grounding and foundational. Renos, thank you so much. Oh, can you hear me, Renos?
Now I can. Yes.
I was mentioning thank you for emphasizing the focus on essentials and wholeness and naturalness, because I think those are very, very key aspects that you've really highlighted for us. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I truly hope we get another chance to converse. A pleasure indeed, and I thank Charlie Weinberg for making the connection. Thank you deeply.
Thank you. All the very best, and good luck with your pursuits. If I can be of any help or anything, you know how to get in touch with me.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And likewise, Charlie, tremendous. Thank you so much.
Lovely to see you, Renos. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Yes, lovely to reconnect. Lovely to reconnect.
Thank you both.
See you later. Thanks.